Guitar Business Radio is the podcast for the business of guitar, where you'll always get no reviews, no demos, and no idle chatter. From players to CEOs and in between. If you have a professional or business connection to the world of guitar, this show is your window to insight and information you won't get anywhere else. I'm Jeffrey D. Brown, and I approve this message. So let's get to it. From Guitar Business Media, welcome to the 73rd episode of GBR, where once again we take a slightly more serious approach to podcasting by bringing you a dab of old school radio combined with a dose of investigative thinking and topped with a frosting of sugar-free humor that's often hard to identify, but I can assure you it's there. So, with that in mind, let me just tell you that we've got a spectacular show for you today. Spectacular. No apologies for using that word. And this is not just for fans of PRS Guitars, but for anyone who's interested in what it really takes to build a successful and sustainable business from the inside. And who better to talk to about that than Jack Higginbotham, the Chief Operating Officer of PRS. He's been with the company literally since the beginning. So stick around, we'll get right to that in just a very quick moment. But first, and there's always a but first, believe me. But first, I just want to give you a quick shout out to our latest official show sponsor, Ormsby Guitars and Perry Ormsby, all the way from Australia. Many of you may already know of their work, but if not, check them out at ormsbyguitars.com. Got some very unique instruments there. And by the way, did you know that you could become an official show sponsor of GBR, business or personal, for as little as $2 a month? You probably didn't know that because, well, we really just launched the program, and you may be asking, what can we possibly get for $2 a month or $5 a month or whatever? Well, the truth is, we're all about value for value. That's how business works, and we're no different. So if you like what we're doing, that's the criteria, folks. If you like what we're doing and you get value from what we do, then you can become an official show sponsor at any level. And there are many levels. And while you'll still continue to get the original value from GBR as an official show sponsor, you'll get even more. Even more. But you can find out more by clicking any one of the official show sponsor links on our website at guitarbusinessradio.com. They're all over the place. If you can't find one, just send us a little note, reach out to us, call us, whatever. We'll send you that link by electronic mail. Electronic mail. I guess that's called email. We'll do it. And while you're considering the value that you might give for the value that you might get right here on GBR, well, we're just going to have to move right on to something completely different. So my guest on GBR today is Jack Higginbotham. He started at PRS Guitars in 1985, pretty much at the beginning. And in his 3.5 decades with them, he's probably held many, I don't know if most, but many of the key positions in the company. And I suspect there isn't much he doesn't know about the history of what has become one of the best-known brands in the guitar world. We've got an awful lot to cover today, folks, so let's just get to it as Jack Higginbotham joins us right here and right now. Hey, Jack, thanks so much for taking the time out of what I know and I'm sure is a very busy schedule to come on the show with us, and welcome to GBR.
Thank you, Jeff. It's absolutely my pleasure. Really glad to make this connection.
So am I. Okay, well, let's dive in. As most of our listeners know, we kind of like to build foundations around here. So to start off, and I want to kind of focus on the time before you started working and as you were growing up, was there anything that was particularly impactful or influential in helping you get to where you are today? Something that stands out?
So the thing that jumps to mind is probably music. So my very earliest memories are of Beatles songs. And I was born in 62, so all sorts of great stuff was happening right about the time that I was cognizant of radio and sound.
That was about 3 years old, right?
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I think I have something inside of me that listens to music deeply. I always have. They say when I was a little kid, I toddled over to a piano and the television was on and the Campbell Soup commercial was on, and I just started playing the Campbell Soup song on the piano. And I just have something inside of me that's always translated and connected with me really strongly. So music was a huge part of my growing up, and just playing with old records and laying on the floor and listening to my parents' old Silvertone stereo. And
oh, wow. Yeah, there you go.
It was just, just a huge part of my life. And so I think as I got older and developed a wider bandwidth of playing music, I knew I wanted to do something inside of music in my life. So that's about as clear a path as I can lie.
So, so how? By the way, that Silvertone setup was probably, if you still had it today, you could be fetching probably a pretty good price for it. I would say someplace.
Yeah, it's not around anymore, and I don't even know where it went. But it was actually pretty cool. It was a cool rig.
So how did it manifest in your younger years? Did you get interested in actually playing an instrument? Did you pursue it, and how did that go?
It manifested itself in wanting to make music on anything I could get my hands on. And so my sister played piano, so I played piano. There was an old guitar in the corner. I picked up the old guitar in the corner. My grandfather was very much into folk Appalachian music. So he had an autoharp, a zither, a dulcimer. So those were all instruments when I visited my grandfather that I'd play around with. And I guess I just learned how to translate those instruments and be able to, maybe not be great on any of them, but to be adequate on a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So I spent a lot of time, like the happiest times I can think of as a kid, were playing music.
Did you get involved in any sort of training or lessons or anything like that to take it a little bit more seriously, or you're just pounding around with it?
Well, kind of a funny story. My sister took piano lessons, and I was pretty much just playing whatever. I play by ear is the punchline, but she'd take a lesson, I'd play what she was playing. My parents were like, oh, that kid can do something. Let's put him in lessons. But they kicked me out after a year because they couldn't make me actually learn the lesson. I would just listen to the kid in front of me and go in and play it. They thought I was progressing pretty well, and I wasn't learning anything other than developing my ear probably.
Yeah.
And so that was the end of formal music lessons for me. But I kept on just listening intently to music and translating that, into playing basically. And quite honestly, that is still the way I play. I am pretty much 100% by ear guy. Yeah.
I guess I fit in that category too, of a lot of other sort of baby boomers that grew up in that time as well. But so during school, did you get involved in any bands or anything like that, or was that?
Yeah, I was in a jazz band, and I was interested in a lot of instruments, so I wanted to pick up the trumpet. My dad actually played some big band stuff in the late 30s. And so there were some pretty decent trumpets laying around my house, and I always thought that was a great sound. So I did that. But again, it was not a primary thing for me. I liked rock and roll. I wanted to play rock and roll, but I also, I'd pick up any instrument to make some noise on it. And as a quick aside, and this might be an interesting thing, I don't know, maybe other people can relate to this as musicians. My father always had a theory that music came too easily to me. And he always thought I was not as good academically as I could be, because I just assumed that everything should be as easy as music was to pick up. So calculus should be that easy.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation.
I just didn't work that hard in school because I probably thought, well, I just couldn't do it because it was difficult, and then everybody else, it must be easy to them because music was easy to me. So I thought everything should be as easy as music.
So, okay, you go through childhood, you go through school. At some point in your fairly young age, you started at PRS, but before I really get into that and we talk a lot about that, tell me a little bit about what, if anything, you did professionally or work-wise prior to coming to PRS.
So when I graduated from high school, I headed off to North Carolina State University in Raleigh. And my dad was an engineer, and he really wanted me to be an engineer, and I wanted to make him happy. So I enrolled as a mechanical engineering student at NC State. And after about 2 years of that, I just knew that that was not going to lead to a happy life for me personally. And I did the stereotypical thing, I suppose. I dropped out of school. I drifted for a bit. I joined a band. I went on the road, and I played music for a few years. Mm-hmm. So that was really, now when you're a musician and you're playing at that level, what that really means is you are a construction worker, you're a roofer, you pave asphalt roads, you do curb and gutter work, and I did all of that stuff.
Got it.
And that weirdly became very, I think it became very good for me as I came into PRS, not just from a manual labor standpoint, but from no fear of hard work and probably a pretty strong work ethic because of all the people that were around me with strong work ethics. So while you could say that might have been wasted energy, I actually think working hard with my hands did a whole lot to make me a more useful, person inside of this business, and really appreciate being able to work within the industry. Because when I came to the realization it wasn't going to work out for me as a professional musician that was going to make it to the level that I wanted to make it at, I was a 22-year-old person who thought that I was an old man, washed up, and life was over. I really thought it was over.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I'll go back to school, I'll get that engineering degree, and I'll just suck it up, and I'll just do what I need to do. Ironically, there was a guy I knew named Paul Smith who was starting a company about right then. And I asked him if I could have a job just long enough to sort of figure out where I was going to land on my feet. He was kind enough to give me a job, and that was 1985. So it's been a little while.
Yeah. So in 3.5 decades later, you're still there. But let's, there's a lot to talk about because you've been there a long time. Virtually the entire history of the company. And so let's talk a little bit in terms of milestones and maybe some of the challenges along the way. We do get into, and we like to talk about some of the business aspects because we are considered a business show within the world of guitar, which covers quite a wide area and a wide audience. But, there's not going to be too many people that know that better than you. So being able to talk about some of the things that, happened and your experience in the business, some of those interesting moments and things that you can recall that would be of interest and offer up not only a a point of view and and a window into that experience, but also maybe some lessons learned and things like that. So how did it all start? What were you doing, and what can you tell us?
So there's so many thoughts I have colliding in my head.
Worlds are colliding.
They are. Worlds are colliding. So how did it start? So I think what I'll do is paint a little picture of me within the company in a timeline fashion.
Perfect. That's exactly what we like to do.
All right. So in 1985, we were just starting as a company. Paul had a fantastic reputation as a guitar builder. The biggest names in rock guitar were using his gear, and it was a very special moment where somebody with his creativity and experience and imagination was able to raise enough funds to start a company to really try to make a difference in the world. And I think what that difference was he saw a need to bring back into the electric guitar market a level of quality that was missing at that point. It was sort of bringing back the golden age of the guitar. Mm-hmm. And it's not to cast aspersions on what anybody was really doing at that point, but sure. Paul was a student of the guitar and a student of guitar history. And as a repair guy, working at the local music shops and working, for the guitar players that had extremely, fine and wonderful older instruments, he saw what they had been and where they were in the early 80s, and he saw an opportunity to bridge the gap and bring that back. So that was the impetus for the company, really. Mm-hmm. And where I fit in was really nothing special. I was just a guy who needed a job. He needed a couple of extra hands. And I came in as an entry-level person making minimum wage, cutting lumber, sanding guitar bodies, doing anything that needed to happen, running dust collector, duct work, literally anything, But let me just interject, because you did have, it sounded like you had some experience working with wood or something. You've been cutting lumber, if you're whatever, you did some construction work. So it wasn't entirely foreign to you, right? No. And I have the right name because I'm sort of a jack of all trades. And I have I have a deep, deep love for music and music creation, but I'm a woodworker too. And my dad, I sound like I'm just a mirror image of my father, and I don't think of myself that way. But in the basement of our house was a wood shop, and I knew how to make stuff, So I spent a lot of time, I enjoy not just wood either. I enjoy making things, whether it's a house, a piece of furniture. I build race car engines for fun.
Wow.
So
there's something.
whatever, I just enjoy putting things together to make something work really well. Mm-hmm. And a guitar certainly fits into that.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the early days, I was just basically, sanding guitars, doing entry level work, and keep in mind, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And what I found out after just a few months is that's what I wanted to do with my life. I was fascinated with the tolerances and the accuracy and the precise nature of building guitars. And when you put that amount of care and precision into something that you're making, the amazing final product. And I was addicted and just wanted to learn more and more and more. So as the company grew, I was a pretty eager guy, and I was never bashful about talking about what I wanted to learn next. So I did a lot of things in the company. I worked at a lot of the positions. I eventually ran the wood shop, which led to me being, I ran an evening shift that we created, which put me in the finish room and electronics and assembly. And then I worked in sales. I did our purchasing. So I just did all of these different jobs. Then we basically, I guess the next chapter I would open up is it's 1995 or so.
Okay, you're at about 10 years now, right?
Yeah. So for 10 years, I went from entry-level guy to I ran production. So I had 5 department managers under me. And at that point, I think we probably had about 85, 90 people.
Wow. Okay.
And things were going really well, and we just literally couldn't make them fast enough. And we had started the company in a little business park, kind of piecemeal. So we had a little bay in a business park, and then we needed more space, so we took another bay and then another bay. And so the flow of the factory was a little awkward, and there were systems in places that systems shouldn't be, and it just didn't really work in a real production environment. So we went on a quest to move the business, and we ended up on the other side of Chesapeake Bay on a little place called Kent Island, where we bought a freestanding warehouse. It was just this empty shell that was a clean canvas, and it was an amazing and wonderful experience to go in there and just draw the production as we wanted it and create a factory that would allow us to double our output, which the world really wanted at that point.
How big was that building? Do you remember at all?
Oh, yeah, because part of it's still here. So it was 20,000 square feet of factory space and about 4,700 square feet of office space.
Okay, so 25 grand. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty good size to make a nice move from office, industrial park or whatever you were in.
Yeah.
We've all done that.
Yeah, coming from where we had been, it seemed like you could never want more, which we found to not be true soon enough. But it seemed like it was just so much better than it had been before.
Yeah.
In our old shop, we had a very it's quaint, I guess, to look back at it, but the dust collector system was actually inside the building, and when it came time to empty the dust collector, you had to wheel a giant plywood box through the finish room.
Oh, good Lord.
So yeah, exactly. So if you've ever made anything, wheeling a box of dirt past a spray booth probably isn't the best. So everything just seemed really great once we moved here.
How long did it take you to build that out and configure it?
It took a while to design it and build it and configure it. Probably 2 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Huh? Wow.
But the really fun thing to remember is we moved it without a day of downtime because we did it over New Year's Eve.
Oh, jeez. Was there champagne or something involved?
There was something, I'm sure. But we had riggers. We shut down on a Friday, and we had riggers ready to take everything apart. One team of people stayed at the old factory. One team of people came here, and we had this thing put together and running over a 3-day period.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and if you ever come to visit us, we have a guitar in our store that we ran through to just make sure all the machines work correctly and glued it together with super glue just so we could make sure everything worked, and everybody signed that guitar, and it hangs in our offices.
Wow, cool, very cool. So what happened once you got up and running there? How did things change?
Well, things changed in a few different ways. Number one, manufacturing wise, it was just easier to manage. There were some quality issues that came about because we have to get into humidity control and things like that. Mm-hmm. But to put it briefly, to build a guitar correctly, at least in Maryland, you have to have systems that will support it. And we believe building under tight climate control conditions is a very important thing. So when we moved here, it was just dialing these systems in and chasing issues all the time. So that kept me hopping for probably another year.
I got it.
So, but other things that changed were we had a really great time inside of artist relations about then. And then it's just during that era of the late 90s and early 2000s, it seemed like everybody that picked up a guitar was a PRS guitar. And so our popularity really skyrocketed. And my job was just to make more and more and more and more. And if you're a production guy, that's just the best position. It's just the best thing to wake up in the morning and get curious about how you're going to do more better. So I look back on the 90s very fondly because it was a very exciting time. You know, anybody that's done a startup has probably gone through those periods, especially like your first recession, your first downturn.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you think that the world's ending because you've never gone through something like that. And we went through that a couple of times. You know, the economy from 85 to 95 wasn't the smoothest thing in the world. And we learned that bad times would come. We would, you know, be creative and get out of those bad situations and learn from them. And that those things are all learning experiences in life that basically, it's basically wisdom in business, right? It's
exactly.
When things, you know, if anybody, I think, just says everything they've done in business has been a home run and it's all been good, I think they're either denying something to others or to themselves, because, you know, bad stuff happens. But when you walk away from that and say, I've learned 3 options on how to get out of this squirrely situation, you tuck that away, you never forget about it, and it will manifest itself at another time. And that's what experience is all about. Well,
those are not really, of course, I've said this many times. If for those who've listened to me more than a few times, they'll know that that I don't consider any of those things failures. A lot of people do. But, you know, some years ago, I learned from a good friend of mine to recategorize all those things I thought as failures into a folder called R&D.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And that's good for your psyche too. And that's, it changes the look and feel of things, and we don't have to beat ourselves up quite as much.
No, I'm with you. And and that's what consultants do, right? They go and through their experience help guide you through something that you think is impossible or improbable. And I believe also, there was a guy who told me once, I was like, I've got a problem. And he wanted me to not use that word problem. He said, no, you have a challenge. And I said, you know what? I've got a problem. I've got a freaking problem. I don't need to candy coat it to myself. So there are times where, you know, I think that the world, I don't even know how to say this eloquently, but I think people try to minimize the negative things that are happening around them. And if you just treat them for what they are and learn from them, you can make use of them later, but you can't deny that they're happening. They are happening.
You know, it's and that reminds me of something I said in the episode I just did last week, which was what I call one of my commentary episodes, where I just have fun with it and talk for 10 or 15 minutes. And one of the things that I said in there, and I can't remember the context in which I did it, but again, another quick lesson that I learned years ago. Some guy said, and this is probably a common thing and one of a billion variations on it, but I think he said something like, you know, if you're going through hell, don't stop for coffee. You know, you can you can get coffee in the next town, and there probably is a Starbucks there too. You know, and you know, and there's a lot of variations on that, but it's so true, and you probably have experienced it. Sometimes you just got to keep moving. You got to keep moving through it, and in almost all cases, those things pass. You know, you get through it, but some people become paralyzed, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. You have to, and I think that comes with time too. You know, it's startling the first time you have a serious problem, but then after 100 serious problems, it's another situation that comes your way that if you don't have the answer to it, you surrounded yourself with a talented team where somebody is going to have the answer to it.
That's
so
right. Perfect.
It just becomes a part of life, really.
Yeah.
So a great example of that, if you'll allow me to jump out of my timeline for a minute.
Oh, just go for it. I mean, I'm here to wrestle you back in if you get to Jupiter, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm not going to do Jupiter, but I'm going to jump about maybe 5 years. Right. And we can go back and cover some of that if you want to. But
well, that's okay.
A lot of us listening probably went through the ultimate challenging time, which would be known as the glorious bank crisis or economic downturn. I just think of it as the 2007 kind of badness.
Yeah. We were there.
I guess everybody listening to this was there. Yeah. So for us, because I think I'm probably pretty genius at planning, I decided what I really wanted to do, and I guess I talked Paul and folks into this, was I'd really like to build a really large building, and I'd like to do it so that we'll never have to build a building again. So we're going to build as much as our land will allow us to, and it's going to be great, and it's going to allow us to start all of these new things. And we had started an acoustic business, and we had started an amplifier business, and it just looked like we were on this wonderful trajectory, and it was just going to be this glorious time. And right in the midst of it, it all went south. And we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars to build this building. And we're standing around going, oh my goodness, this is not how it's going to end. This is bad, but this is not how it's going to end. And we knew that we had to do something different to survive. And probably in a very different position than a lot of other companies, if only in that we were not all that established, and we were all, we're still fairly young. But then we had taken on this huge construction project, and it was just all bad. So we got in a room, and there was a notion, and it was a sound notion. We said, the world is not dying for another $3,500 to $5,000 guitar. People are not beating the door down here right now in 2008 because everything in their stock portfolio just collapsed. Their 401k looks like they're not going to have one. What they're probably not going to do is run out with the last few $1,000 they have and buy a PRS. So we've better do something different.
Now, let me just ask you, and I don't want to proceed or spoil any of what you're saying, but were you at that time, was that the predominant price range? I mean, you were still making the higher end instruments?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We, at that point, we basically had two legitimate businesses going. The guitars that we were making in our factory, that's in the ballpark of what the street prices would have been. We had started the import line, the PRS SE series. We had started that in about the year 2000, which was fantastic because that was in a price point that was pretty popular, and we had worked a lot on building a strong foundation in that business. So that was a lifesaver.
Okay.
But what we didn't have was anything between the SE series and what we were making at that time in Maryland.
And the SE, just for point of reference, that price range compared to the other one was
so
what?
It would be at that point it was $399 to about $799.
Okay, all right.
Currently, we're at about $499, and it goes a little bit higher because we make a lot more variations of that.
Okay.
But so anyway, so we've got that SC line, and then we have what we have in core, and we assembled everyone in our conference room, and it was manufacturing, engineering, marketing, sales, artist relations, maintenance. I mean, it was just about everybody that was a department head or a manager. We got in a room and said, we need to basically engineer our way out of this situation. And what we wanted to do was to take a guitar that was on man hours on the shop floor, a 24, 25 man hour guitar, which was the expensive guitars that we make, and find a way to make a guitar in 6 or 7 hours while not compromising anything, the integrity of the instrument, and able to street a guitar at, $1,379, I think was our first target price, but somewhere around $1,400. And when this company was presented with that challenge, the company, and when I say the company, it's the people running those departments did an outrageous job and got it done well, quickly, and accurately, delivered early. And had we not been a team that could pull together and do that, we would have had very, very serious issues. So when I do a factory tour here, and I love doing factory tours here, if anybody is ever on the East Coast and wants to come to PRS Guitar, you should come. Should come and take one of our factory tours, because we love walking people around. But I love to look at our line now, which is known as S2, which was a code for Stevensville's second line, is kind of what it kind of stuck. But those S2 guitars, which are the Mira, the Starla, the Vela, the S2 version of the Custom 24, all of those guitars were made so that we could have a product to offer in a hard time that was a PRS guitar, that didn't compromise on the neck shape, that didn't compromise on the stability or the playability. It was just made in a more simple version that allowed us to get the guitar out in the market. And I think it went a long way in helping us to weather that storm. But the cool thing that happened, that I don't think we intended to happen, was that it appealed to a new player, and it appealed to a new artist and a new customer. It even appealed to a new dealer. So I think of it, or maybe we think of it, as kind of the indie guitar. It's the PRS guitar that isn't from the 80s. And there's, what my kids, when they pick up a guitar, it's typically one of those series of guitars.
Okay.
The other cool thing, in addition to growing our customer base and kind of expanding the view of what people think of when they think of PRS, it also, when the economy turned and everything started getting better, I sort of assumed that guitar would start to diminish, but it absolutely has not diminished at all.
Wow.
And I think of it as the rising tide floating all ships, scenario. The foundation we laid with that intense necessity was a very strong foundation, and it just developed a larger customer base and helped with the overall growth of the business, which we're on a wonderful trajectory at this point.
That's a really great story, and I think there's a lot to learn from that, and I thank you for sharing the details of that. We love the inside baseball stuff here, as I say. So that's good to hear. So so we get out of the recession, so to speak, and things begin to move along as we just talk about. I'm going to get into some specific topics in a few minutes here, but just kind of give us a sense of, and basically take us from that point to where we are right now, and then we'll kind of backtrack a little bit and talk about some of these specifics.
So something that just popped in my mind that I think is worth sharing, philosophically probably, is our relationship with the retailers is very special to us. And when the times were really, really hard, there were a lot of retailers that helped us out. And we tried to help them. We were all in it together. It was hard for everybody. And we've always, I think most people here at this company grew up inside of this company. We're guitar builders, and we appreciate the integrity of the instruments that we make. We are personally attached to the dealers and distributors that buy our guitars, and it's kind of a personal thing. Not like I don't want to talk to you about it, but it's a personal relationship that we have with these folks. And when we hit hard times, a lot of those folks went out of their way to help us. And we went out of our way to make sure we delivered to the best of our ability. And I think everyone appreciated that. And so as we have come into a better time, what I think we've done is we've weathered a storm together. The bond is tighter than it ever has been. And I think our partners, who are our dealers, are with us in growing this thing. And I don't think we could grow at the rate that we are growing if it wasn't for the relationships that we have with so many of our key dealers.
Let me just ask you something that I'm curious about, and you can answer it any way you feel comfortable. But when you say your dealers helped you out, what does that mean? What did they do?
I think what they did, I can't say verbatim what everybody did.
I understand that, but I'm looking for you to characterize it. So
I think what they did was said, PRS is a company that cares about making good instruments. They're trying to provide a high value instrument. And when a customer comes in the door, there's not 100 coming in the door, there's only 10 coming in the door. And when they do come in the door, the dealer was our partner in making sure we were a part of the options to choose from when that person came in.
Okay.
And I think what I believe we did during that time that's really important is we didn't cut corners. We didn't, try to do more with less. We stuck to our guns, and we did what we had always done. We made the best guitar that we knew how to make. So I think also dealers have to they're scrutinizing themselves because they have to be careful with their open to buy dollars or whatever terminology they use. Mm-hmm. They only have so much money. What are they going to choose to spend it on?
Right.
And they did choose to spend it with us, which we appreciate very much.
So I think that's a really valuable point. And so you've had obviously you've had a long time to develop those networks and all of those integrations and management points and stuff like that. So in terms of where you're at today, let me backtrack and go into and we'll come back later to where we are right now. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about marketing and sales, which I know you know something about. But I'm kind of curious in kind of a brief way how that has changed for PRS over the years, and what is it that's working now? It's kind of a tricky question, but you've seen some of these things, so I'm kind of interested in kind of the highlights of that, if you can think of anything.
Sure. Well, then we're going to reel back to 1985 really quickly.
Let's go back in time.
All right, into the time machine. When the company started, Paul felt very strongly that he didn't want to look like, feel like, smell like, taste like anything that was new. He wanted to not be the new kid on the block. He wanted to be a part of the scene and appear to be a real player. So at the very beginning of the company, we invested in full page ads. We had an amazing artist roster. Those artists agreed to be in our ads. We had beautiful guitars. They were full page glossy photos and we spent an exorbitant amount of all of the money, and we weren't making any money, but we were pretty much spending all the money on trying to make guitars better and trying to present ourselves to the market as a real player. And that's the way we were then. And we have I guess as time went on, we have had to do that less because we are, we're established now. It's not like we have to do any, we don't have to commit suicide to present ourselves in the way we want to. But at the same time, and this is kind of going off on a tangent, I think it may be a little odd that we're a 35-year-old company, and I often think of us as a 35-year-old startup. We don't realize that we've been doing this for 35 years sometimes, and we're waking up with, fire in your belly or whatever phrase you want to use. We're waking up with an intense desire to do better today than we did yesterday at what I have been told is a strange level. But I think on the marketing side of things, we're always pushing to look for creative ways to get our message across. As much as we would like to think, there's an awful lot of people out there that don't know the ins and outs of PRS, and maybe they've never even heard of PRS. And I talk to plenty of guitar players that have yet to play a PRS or own a PRS. And
I think I admitted to that the other day, though, didn't I?
You did, and I wasn't going to call you out on that, Jeff.
It's okay. I'm okay with it. It's okay with it. But maybe that'll change. Change.
You're a great example of that. I mean, you're a guy who's played guitar for a long time, and you just have not come to experience that yet. And we want to reach everyone that we can. So Judy Schaefer is our marketing director. She's a very creative person. Her quest is to find new avenues, new conduit, new ways of communicating with new people to make sure that everybody has the message, and we can direct them, in the proper way.
Yeah.
Which also, another tangent, going to go off on a tangent, but the team that we have at PRS is, people look at PRS and they see Paul, and Paul is legitimately the brain trust. He's a wonderful guy. He's an inventor. He has a level of passion for the guitar that I have never experienced in another living human being. He is more driven to find out the next unknown thing than anybody I know in this industry. But we have an amazing team that is here. He has a dream, and it's this team's job to figure out how to realize that dream. And like I was saying earlier, an awful lot of us have grown up inside of this place and kind of feel, we're very deeply embedded in it. But we have not a board of directors, but a group of directors that manage the departments here that really make the world go around.
Just a quick piece of trivia. Do you have a sense of what the head count is in the company now?
We're somewhere in the ballpark of 350, 360.
No, that's pretty good size.
Pretty and we've got, it's 350, 360, and would like to have more people, would like to make more guitars. It's an interesting time in this company. We've got about, on average, probably every guitar that's being made on the shop floor is sold, and every guitar that's going to be made in the next 6 months is pretty much already sold. So we're in an interesting and good position of being heavily back ordered. And so the moment we are in time reminds me of the late 90s, where popularity is out the roof. I was the production manager at that point, and the name of the game was, how can we grow the business and not undermine all the foundational work that we put into it? We're back in that spot, and it's a beautiful spot to be in.
Let me shift gears just a little bit again, and you broached the subject earlier, but I want to talk about the imports a little bit in that business, because a lot of companies, obviously over many years now, have made the moves to imports and to, for whatever reason, to create affordable price points or whatever. And certainly there's a bunch of companies now that's all they do. It's all import. And I know a bunch of them and have worked with some of them. So I guess my question, I wanted to give you an opening here to tell us a little bit about how PRS has created what I would just think of as a seamless product line, if that's what it is, across all models and price points. So it feels like it's, from what I've seen, it feels like it's one line, where in some companies and the way they've done it, they've sort of created a really distinctive two-tier thing, So I'd like to know how you guys look at it and what are the nuances there.
Well, that's a whole cool story in and of itself. So, and I'll try to be brief. I'm not good at that.
That's okay. We have time. We're good. So no problem, Jack.
In 1999, Carlos Santana has obviously had a fantastic career, but he made this little record, and it was the Supernatural album, and he went to the moon. And we'd been working with Carlos for decades even then. And he came to us and basically challenged us to make a guitar that was his guitar, that more people could afford to buy, because he was going out on these massive tours. He was meeting these people, and his signature guitar that we were making at that point was a very expensive guitar. And so he was just coming from a pretty human point of view, saying, there's a lot of people out there that like what I'm doing. It's inspiring them to play guitar, and my guitar, they can't afford it. Do something else. And that challenged us to really think about how we could become a part of the import game. And we didn't want to do kind of the typical thing. So, and the typical thing is put your name on something and hope it's good enough and you're off to the races, I guess. And I'm not saying, I shouldn't say it's typical, because I don't think that's really the way it is. But what I guess what I would say is we went to an extreme that said, we want to do an import guitar, we want to hit a price point, but we want to be more part of the process. And we have very specific criteria that we want to hold. And if it's going to have our company name on it, it's got to be something that we'd want to play. And that's the position that we came from. So we, at the beginning of that process, I'd say if you look at a very early PRS SE guitar, it is quite different than what we did as PRS then, and is quite different than what we do inside of the SE line now. And I think the biggest reason of that was we were afraid of, we were just afraid of public opinion. We didn't want somebody to say, oh, you're just going out there and trying to grab money. You're not, it's whatever. So we were very careful. We distanced ourselves from it, actually. And so it looked very different, but playability, we were always working on that level of what do we want inside of a PRS. But it had, no maple top. No, it was just a painted slab body with an arm relief, basically based on our perimeter. It had our headstock shape. We didn't even use our trademark inlays for a couple of years, because we just were trying to keep it as a separate thing. Mm-hmm. As we have gone through time and you get into what you look at now with our guitars, the world has become very comfortable with this business of ours, the import side of things. The world appreciates it. The world loves it. We appreciate it. We love it. And as just like a child growing up, it started to mature, and it's maturing in a place that's closer and closer to what we do here in Maryland, without being a direct knockoff. So it's a fine line exercise of how to bring in what trademarks to claim your space and say this is the PRS SE, but also give enough breathing room to it and to the guitars we make in Maryland so that we're not competing with each other on that level. And that has been, I mean, really going on 20 years now, which is really kind of hard to imagine, but it's really been a 20-year dance. And what I feel great about is the guitars that we're now making overseas, we're making them with these partnerships we've developed with the offshore manufacturers that has led us to become even more involved in the process and make guitars that we're even more proud of and more inspirational. And inspirational is kind of a word I always end up saying. What we want is for somebody to pick up our guitars and music come out of it. Something that you have in your head becomes unlocked, and that thing in your head flows into your hands through that instrument, and you just are able to hear with your ears what you've heard in your head. And I think I said this or I wrote this in a newsletter or something at some point pretty recently, but I have a few different instruments in my house, and it's an interesting thing to me. I've got a Yamaha Grand, and I sit down at the piano and a song will come out, and it's a different song than if I sit on my couch and I pick one of our acoustic guitars up and I play that. A different song is inside of that instrument. You pick up one of our electrics and a different song is inside of that instrument. And these things, to me, that is what an inspirational instrument does. It either unlocks a song that you've had in your head or helps you to create one in that moment. And it takes a particular instrument to do that on. And that's what we're trying to do. Paul calls it, we're tool makers. And he's right. We're making a tool to fit a job, whether that job is as a gigging musician, a singer-songwriter, a rock star that's touring the world. We're making a tool for you so that when you pick that thing up, it performs the way you need it to perform. And if you're looking for inspiration, it encourages the music to come out of you, not present itself as a roadblock against the music. So if we've done our jobs right, I think that's the situation that happens.
Yeah. Well, that's inspiring. I have, and I don't mean to be flippant about it, I am sincere because you say it eloquently. And that kind of leads me in a nice little segue to something that I like to ask executives that I talk to. I've talked to a lot of CEOs and other sort of C-level type people. I like to ask them a little bit about the company culture and what's unique about it and how does it impact the performance of the company. What can you tell us about the PRS culture and how that works and what it's done for you?
All right. So you ask really good questions.
Thank you very much. I hope other people say that too. I try hard.
No, it's good. And you ask questions that make a lot of thoughts collide in me. But a few things. Our culture is, I think of our company, and I hope everybody that works here feels this way. We're a really big, small family business. We are not very separated from each other. We have a common cause. And one thing that hit my head when you asked me that question was, I have a strong feeling, because I have been told this by a ton of people when I'm walking them through here, the level of care that the folks on the shop floor have for the instruments that they're making is extraordinary. And I have wondered myself why that is. But I will, we have had, there's no such thing as a perfect anything, perfect family, perfect anything.
That's right.
Perfect business.
Yeah.
You know, there's always stuff. And we've had some, you know, I've gone through some heartbreaking situations inside of this company and had to, you know, do the thing where people don't work here anymore. But all through any of those times, what I've not experienced is anybody sabotaging a guitar. I've not experienced it. And there is a care for the instrument and a respect for the company that is very, very deep here. And the culture is very, it's kind of a one level vibe I think you get here. I don't know, I'm not describing it very well, but culture wise, I would say that it's not a class system. You know, it's not like that. It's a very open door policy. I have all kinds of people that'll come in and, you know, if they've got a concern, I get to hear about the concern. I get to try to help create a solution for the concern. And it's culturally very open. And I believe people genuinely enjoy working here. And if I turn that on myself, I will tell you, you know, I worked here at a time where we didn't have any money, and I think I was making $4.25 an hour here.
Wow.
At the beginning of this company.
Sure, sounds about right.
But I had an intense pride in the mission we were on. You know, we were on a mission at that time, and I feel like we're still on a mission. And I think everybody here feels that energy and feels that crazy notion we have when we wake up in the morning and we just, you know, are dying to get in here and do something different, new, good, you know, kind of thing. It's this mission that we're on. And it's a real, I don't know, it's a unique feeling, I think, that I get when I'm in here. So anyway, that is part of the culture, I think, is also in music. So
I think you've articulated it really quite well. I mean, I didn't have any trouble you know, picking that up, and I think that it always shows in companies. You know, don't you think that you can see that they're doing something right? And you talk to people in the company, and yeah, there's always going to be a bad apple here and there, but by and large, the culture does make such a big difference. I mean, I've worked in my days in working for big media companies, and my magazine days, I had one stint for about 3 years with a company that was just horrible. I mean, the culture was terrible, you know, and I won't go much more into it, but, you know, it does take a toll. It does take a toll, and you can see it and you can feel it. It's like it permeates. So, you know, those things are fairly obvious, and it's really good to hear. Let me.
And why would it? I mean, just to talk about it just for a minute more, but absolutely. I think why would you get motivated to go in and do your very best for a company that you felt, you know, that was the environment? And to go back to the other thing I was saying, I do not know what it is that systemically is inside of this company, but when you go onto the shop floor, the love that people have for the craft that they have been blessed with, you know, that just manifests itself into the instrument. And people say, oh, PRS guitars are whatever, you know, they feel great, they do whatever. That's because there's 350 people on the shop floor that care enough to make sure that instrument is made that way. And I'm very thankful for everybody that has chosen to work here and kind of, like I said, sort of like adopt Paul's mission, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, look, you've been there 35 years. And so even just that, whenever I talk to people that have done something like that, you know, there's something good going on behind it. And I would, just on a humorous note, I would clarify, because you kind of asked the question, well, why would you put up with something like, why would you go in and kind of give it your all? And I think that's a great question. And the only thing I can come up with for the reasons that I stayed for those 3 years was just a big salary. Right. And in the end, even that wasn't enough.
No. There's something to be said for satisfaction,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's why I do what I do today. I mean, I make a lot less money than I did in those days. Of course, I was in the medical media, so there's, tons of money there. But right. I love what I do, and I'm doing the things that, make a difference for me. And but that kind of leads me to, as I kind of move into the last part of this here, let's open up the window a little bit wider and talk about on the broader horizon. Let me just ask you, as you kind of look at the industry as a whole, kind of sort of the macro view of it, what do you see as the most significant opportunities and maybe potential hiccups as well? Anything come to mind?
I think the opportunities, based on the data that I see, if I look at numbers, I say opportunities are everywhere, and it is the rising tide floating all ships. So just in a very sweeping way, I don't see one place of an opportunity for our company. I do see that there are certain segments of the company that are expanding rapidly. Amplifiers are one of them. So we are beginning to do a better job of looking at these elements of the business and starting to treat them as discrete businesses and nurturing them as their own thing so that they can flourish.
Yeah.
But amplifiers are a place to where we have the Sonzera head and cabinets, the MT15 Mark Tremonti signature lunchbox amp, John Mayer and his signature amp. We have a very wide offering of amplifiers that have caught the imagination of the guitarists out there. And those things are growing quite rapidly. The import side of things, I think, we're still so much room to grow and so many ideas that are in our heads that it's hard to have self-control to not launch something new every 10 minutes.
It's the candy store, right?
It's the candy store thing. If you could see my office right now, you would definitely know that it's real. I've got about 15 instruments on walls and.
Well, I saw the whiteboards there when we first talked, so I saw that much, right? Is that what I was seeing?
No, if I turn this thing around and you saw my other wall,
yeah, I figured it's
wood, and it's a lot of guitars and a lot of guitar cases. But I think there's a huge opportunity on the import side of things, and I've been focusing on that myself for a couple of years now to see how we can make a difference inside of that part of the business. So. And then for the guitars that we just grew up building here, like I said, the world seems to want a lot from us right now. So we're constantly, I really mean constantly, still looking for ways to make these instruments better. Paul is, like I also was saying, is just relentless and tenacious, and he has ideas and he wants to see them all, be realized as fast as possible. So I think that we have major opportunities all through the tiers that we have here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, do you think that the overall state of the economy today, sort of the general consensus is doing pretty well? Has that made a difference for you? Do you feel that impacts you?
Yeah, I think. Well, it's certainly not hurting us.
No, I would hope not.
I think when people are comfortable, it's all about consumer confidence in the end.
Yeah.
And so I think people are feeling pretty confident. At the same time, our international sales are doing really, really well. Our sales in Europe are doing really, really well. So it's not just that the U.S. is strong, that we're feeling what we're feeling. There's more to it than that. I think that somehow it almost feels like it's our time right now. We're not thought of as in younger, lesser, or whatever. We're just that guitar company that's making guitars, and we're in the conversation.
Well, let's hope that continues. As we come to a close, I have one sort of final kind of personal question. You know, you've had obviously an extraordinary career so far, a lot of years there. So I guess my final question is, and we're talking about Jack now, what's important to you now, and, you know, what's left to do?
Right. I think for me, what I want to do is have a company. So I'm 57 years old. I'm not quite dead yet.
No, not at all.
I do believe that I want to feel confident that this company is ready to go for another generation or two. So sustainable growth as a business is a big deal with me. So what I feel strongly about, among other things, is making sure that this business is set up in perpetuity. So that's big. On a micro level, continuing to see what we can do to bring more people into the PRS family through our import line is huge for me. And to sit back a little bit more and look at the global business operations and be able to see the forest without the trees a little more often, to make sure we're safe as an entity as we go on through the next couple of decades. That's big for me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that'll always be big for me is I started this thing for myself. I came to PRS and I followed my heart. You know, I followed my heart as I've gone through this company, and I continue to follow my heart as I just look for new opportunities to help the company from within. So if, you know, I know it's kind of a dicey thing, and it can be a dangerous thing. And I know people that have followed their heart without enough consideration for reality. But I've also seen people who have decided not to follow their heart, fell short, and didn't live the life that they wanted to. So one thing really the only thing that I wanted to say on this show that I knew I wanted to say is, don't throttle yourself from following a dream that is a properly vetted dream. You know, don't worry about what people say. Don't worry. Just follow your heart. And the silly sayings that are, you know, do what you love and you'll never work another day is really, really true. And it's not always a great day at the office, but, you know, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, that's great advice, and that's so true. That's very much you know, how I look at things. And you're right. There's always a speed, you know, I would say speed bump, but there's bumps in the road, and you gotta be able to look past that. And like I said before, you know, if you think you're going through hell, just keep going. That's right. Don't stop for coffee. As one guy said, don't build a condo. So we're not going to do that. Well, look, this has been a lot of fun. Great information, great perspective. What a wonderful inside view of a company that certainly we all know well. And even though I've never played a PRS guitar yet, we may work that out.
We're going to work on you.
But listen, again, thanks so much. And I do look forward to chatting with you again, Jack. And, you know, if I'm in that area, I'm definitely coming in for that factory tour.
We would love that.
Awesome. We'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Take care.
So what did you think of our interview with Jack Higginbotham? We always want to hear from you. You can do that easily through the official episode page on our website at guitarbusinessradio.com, or on Facebook and Twitter at Guitar Business, or email us directly at contact@guitarbusinessradio.com. And here it comes. You know the drill. If none of that works for you, just call us on our GBR hotline, 888-777-2404. You can do that right now if you like, or later. Operators are standing by. That's kind of different. Well, once again, I think we knocked it out of the park here. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but that's my opinion. What a great story. And Jack is indeed a great storyteller. I'm sure we could have gone on for much longer. In fact, I'm looking forward to sitting back and listening to the full interview without having to be doing the interview or editing the interview. I mean, in either of those situations, you're simultaneously having to do something else, so it's hard to hear, let alone absorb everything that is said. And you know, one of the things that I'm always trying to bring out of these interviews on GBR is, and I've said this before, the lessons that we can all take away and get something of value from. And man, there are a lot of lessons here, and most of them, I'm afraid, will become known to me with more clarity after I've already recorded this part of the show. So, you know, I mean, that's okay. In fact, I'm reminded that many of my guests on the show have said to me after the episode was baked that they weren't sure if they said things the right way or maybe wish they could have had a do-over. But I've always had the same answer for them, as well as myself, and that is, it's okay. It's normal. The trick is, if you think you could have said something better, don't forget it. And don't fret over it. I can't believe I said fret over it. That's funny. Well, whatever. Don't fret, but don't forget. That's it. Don't fret, but don't forget. You'll have another opportunity to express that thought in a better way, or maybe just in a way that you'll be happier with. In the meantime, keep moving. You got to keep moving, especially if you're going through hell. I love that line. Don't stop for coffee. Now, I was particularly impressed with how Jack is looking at the future. He seems genuinely focused on making sure that PRS Guitars continues on and is sustainable for future generations. That takes a different kind of thinking than how big of a short-term profit can we make this quarter. And don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Profit's great. It's a required part of the success formula, but executing on a longer-term vision always depends on solid foundations. We've talked about that. And that's a simple concept that really applies to all of us, both personally and professionally. Unfortunately, it's not something that many people think about until it's, well, late in the game, and then it's more challenging at best. But I think you can see from all that Jack describes, with many ups and downs and challenges behind them, PRS has built a foundation upon which it can execute its sustainable future. And I truly think that many of the principal examples we heard today can have application in our own businesses and our personal lives as well. And while you think about all that and wonder what it means for you, stay positive. Stay focused on your destination. But don't be self-limiting. Keep all the options open on how you're going to get there. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week on episode 74. And that's it for this episode of Guitar Business Radio. Thanks for being with us. You can stay tuned and stay in touch at guitarbusinessradio.com.